Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today I would like to share about types of non-probability sampling. I am Fitri Landari from 5PC class. Before we go on to the types of non-probability sampling, let us know about the definitions of non-probability sampling itself. In non-probability sampling, the sample is selected based on non-random criteria, and not every member of the population has a chance of being included. That's the key. Not every member of the population has a chance of being included. So here we have 5 types of non-probability sampling. They are purposive sampling, quota sampling, convenience sampling, consecutive sampling, and snowball sampling. Let's take a dip in one by one of the type of non-probability sampling. First is purposive sampling. This type of sampling involves the researchers using their judgment to select a sample that is most useful to the purpose of the research. In this type, it means the researchers has set the criteria, has set a specific characteristic of the person for the sample. For example, researchers want to meet the sample of women 20 years old, woman pregnancy woman in 20 years old, and then the last education is high school, and also she's good in literacy. So there's the criteria of the sample for being of the persons for being a sample of his research, right? So that's what we call as purposive sampling. Next is quota sampling. With proportional quota sampling, the aim is to end up with a sample where the strata or groups being studied. We can take the easy meaning, take the simple meaning from this sampling, which is the quota. It means that there's a specific number. There's a specific number for your sample, for your person, for a person. For example, the researchers want to do research on employee in some company for 30 sample. So when the researchers reach 30 sample, so this research is done for the sampling because they have a specific number, which is 30. The third is convenience sampling. A convenience sample simply includes the individuals who happen to be most accessible to the researchers. It means that as long as the researchers think that the person who she or he met and meet the criteria, she or he as a researcher can take him or her as the sample. For example, the researchers meet person at mall or at somewhere. As long as they meet the criteria, they can take them as the sample. And then consecutive sampling. Consecutive sampling is a sampling technique in which every subject meeting the criteria of inclusion is selected until the required sample size is achieved. In consecutive sampling, actually, there are inclusions and exclusions. When the person that we assume meet the criteria, we can put them in inclusions. Once they are not, so we put them on exclusions. For example, how salt consumptions can affect the hypertension. That's the for example. So we've met 100 of women for being research for our research, and then from 100 of women we can decided whether we put them as inclusions or exclusions, because there are so many factors for having the hypertension itself. Sometimes they have a bias co-finding. For example, we would like to find the pure of salt consumptions, not any other factor. When the women have another factor, for example, like stress and something like that, and some other factor, so the stress itself, that's what we call as bias co-finding. So when the women have another factor, we put them as in exclusions. Meanwhile, the rest we put them in inclusion, which is the women that having the hypertension because of the pure of salt consumptions. That's the for example of consecutive sampling. And then for the last is snowball sampling. Snowball sampling is particularly appropriate when the population you are interested is hidden and or hard to reach. In snowball sampling, you begin by identifying someone who meets in the criteria for inclusion in your study. For example, you'd like to do research on homeless, so I think it's quite hard to find the homeless as our sample. So the first thing is we meet one of the homeless. We try to find one of the homeless that meet our criteria, and after that we ask that homeless to give us the informations about another homeless. So and after that we do the same to the next homeless. That's the snowball sampling, because when we're using snowball sampling, it means that our topic it's hard to reach. So that's why we did it take one person and then get the information of them. I think that's all. That's the type of non-probability sampling. Thank you and see you in the next video. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.